Hello there! So, since the last episode, I've been busy fixing up some issues with the bomber, and making a second craft for the carrier, as well as beginning on the third craft. We'll go into the second craft later, the third craft, well, later in this video, the third craft will be its own video entirely. And we'll start with the major changes that I've made here. So, there are no longer local weapon controllers here. Instead, there's only CWIS controllers, the breadboard actually pulls the trigger. This helps the not firing problem a lot. Occasionally there will be erroneous shots, but they're low enough that it doesn't really matter too much to me. The other thing is this CWIS controller is no longer touching any heavy armor. I had forgotten that a lot of AI components were updated to have 100% EMP susceptibility, which means that surge protectors won't actually work to pull EMP from them. I find that even for components that have less than 100% EMP susceptibility, it's not working the way it was explained to me previously, so surge protectors do not preemptively drain EMP over batteries, even though that was my understanding. So I do have batteries touching heavy armor here. It's not been as much of a problem as the CWIS controllers because the batteries are way more durable and they're further away from the point of most EMP impacts. But if it becomes a problem, I will isolate them. They're back here. I did a little bit of changes to the breadboard itself as well. So she automatically fires, there's no checks on yaw or anything, so sometimes it's erroneous, but it's fine. I changed the piecewise linear function for the dive profile to a sine wave, so that she doesn't flare as much on the way down, and that's pretty much it. There's been a bunch of small stuff. Since I've done live fire testing, there's a lot of vulnerability things, and just minor tweaks of numbers here and there, but for the most part, those are the major changes that I made. And we'll just take a really quick look. We'll just do one very quick dive bombing run against the tier to show that, well, she actually does pull the trigger pretty reliably now. It's still not necessarily perfect, and bombing runs against 90 plus meter per second craft still leave a little bit to be desired. I want to fix this main drive flickering a little bit. It'll bring her up from about 145 meter per second dive to a maybe 155 meter per second dive. So I'm going to let her come back around, and then she'll be back into the situation where she would normally face most of her problems. This head-on thing is not a huge problem. It's coming in over the side like this that was giving her problems before. And just like that, problem solved. So she's still not perfect. I'll still be tweaking her quite a bit before putting her on the Steam Workshop, but for now, she'll serve the purposes, so let's move on to the smaller drone. And here's the plasma drone. So initially I was going to build a hover tank instead, but it was becoming too expensive and too ugly, so I scrapped it and went for a quick drone, which I really wanted to fit a pretty similar styling profile to the bomber. She's not quite there, but it's difficult with very small craft. I'll probably make a few tweaks, but for now, she's serving the purpose. She's considerably slower than the bomber, only going about 55 meters per second forwards. I haven't done top speed backwards, it should be about 75 meters per second, pulling in about 34 firepower and costing about 42,000. The firepower comes in order of 2 plasma guns, and they shoot 12 charged shots, so slow rate of fire, but powerful shots when they come in. On the interior, she's a bit squashed. There used to be batteries here instead of a backup engine, but despite the fact that the batteries and surge protectors were both touching the heavy armor, I was losing the batteries, which was not how I understood things to work, but apparently I need somebody to teach me how EMP actually works, preferably in a very technical way rather than an untechnical hand-wavy way. So I moved the batteries here. They don't actually do much to keep the wings from falling off, so I might address some structural rigidity things in a bit there and see if I can improve that without increasing the block count too much or making them too fat. Other than that, I had to settle for metal here instead of heavy armor because it touches the AI at the bottom. Maybe I'll see a way to avoid that, and then I'll be able to use heavy armor, which will increase cost by a little bit, but it'll make it so that HE shells to the top or bottom, like from the crossbones or that sort of thing that detonate near the craft, don't just punch through and kill her, and make her more durable from indirect fire. Right now it's really just from the front. This heavy armor is part of a network with some beams here that goes back here, then around here, and then into here, and there's a similar thing on the bottom. So for most places in the craft, you can lose these batteries, but the heavy armor definitely prefers the EMP over AI components, and I don't mean that as a universal thing, I mean just based on this craft layout. So it has mostly kept her safe. I tested her against things like the Zephyr, and she seemed to work out pretty well. So I'm going to keep going with her for now. Right now she's just using AI hover movement, and I intend to change that to just a breadboard that has movement seated based on the time that she's released from the carrier, so that I can have a fleet of these either do a ring around the carrier or alter heights and spread out in other ways based on the time that they're released, so I don't have issues with them bumping into each other. And that'll let me do some pretty severe evasive actions without having to worry about just crunching these into each other all the time. But I'm not going to do that until after I build the carrier, so there may be a significant lapse while I'm doing some final tweaks after I've built the whole of the carrier, but before I release anything. But anyway, let's just shoot at a few things, and unlike some of the other tests, I'm going to be letting them shoot back so that we'll see some of the vulnerabilities that we have here, and how well we tank different types of damage. Haha, yikes. I filmed that last portion about a week ago, and you can probably hear from my voice that I was coming down with a bit of an illness. And then I started filming the next portion, just some combined arms testing on some somewhat harder to attack craft. And I absolutely died. Whatever sickness I was trying to push through just totally leveled me. And then I was completely useless for a week. Pretty sure I had COVID because when I tried to breathe in really deeply, it felt sort of like I had fluid in my lungs, but I'm pretty sure it was just a little bit of inflammation. And like everyone at work got COVID, so pretty good chances. I didn't bother testing because, well, it's really just don't spread it to other people, right? Like, and rest and drink some water. So, not a good first attack. Let's see if we have a second one. That was actually not terrible, though. We didn't successfully bomb the thing, but it wasn't bad, especially for the beginning of a fight, which is always the hardest. I don't think I'm in this one, and I think my repair tentacles are on, so let's switch those off. And we'll get in here so that we can get a slightly better look at our bombing run. So the Great Talons is definitely a better target than some of the stuff I've been shooting at with these drones. Still a bit more wiggle than I'd like coming in. But it's okay. Let's see if that wiggle is from me or from the target. Yeah, that's gonna be a wiggle from me. The target's pretty steady. So definitely some more tweaks to do. The firepower, though, is reasonable. We're getting in damage. The achievement's not a hard target, but we're not attacking with that expensive a craft. Okay, so the head-on is going to be a huge problem. We're leading way too much. The head-on definitely might require actually aiming directly towards the target to take the shot. Leading the way that we were was definitely a huge issue. Drones don't have a lot of power, but definitely adds up, and the plasma's good at chasing through this heavy armor. Less efficient against other targets, which is why I'll probably retrofit them. I like how they move when they start doing avoidance from each other. Yeah, so we're getting good bombing runs in from behind the target, but bad bombing runs in from the front. So it is good, though, that we're able to bomb the achievement at all, because it's moderately fast, circles, not an easy target. So, and as I've said before, this would be better with stabilizers on it, and if it just was like a gunship. That was actually not bad. We still failed to hit it, but that wasn't bad. And I think there's a few things that I can do to make that bombing run better. So I'll probably make a few tweaks once I'm done making the carrier and see if I can get something a little bit more reliable. So this test, even though I don't, oops, let's show it this way. I don't have God mode on any of the smaller craft. They're not actually taking fire from the achievement here. Yeah, that head-on isn't viable because of the angle that we're doing. And I think that's the only reason it wasn't viable. So just some small adjustments to have us ease in towards the center of mass when we're getting close, I think we'll take care of all of those issues. So once I'm done making the carrier, I'll do one last round of tweaks. For now, I'm going to spawn in maybe one more vehicle, one that I think actually shoots against these.
Listening.
I think if I pull this from play, it'll still keep feeding energy. Yeah, it's still feeding energy, so I'll pull it from play just to guarantee that we take fire. I had done this test before, and let me try to remember where it is. It's a Hardcraft, isn't it? So I've done this test before. This is like cheaper than the bomber by itself, so I could probably spawn in 2 of these, but it's a good test craft because it uses EMP, and it is a nightmare because of that to fight with small vehicles. Oh, actually, without the small craft, we might not be able to bomb it at all. This bombing run is not easy because it's flying above our flight ceiling. We're still able to shoot up at it, but I have a flight ceiling of 500 meters set, and we don't quite achieve that because I have a maximum pitch as well, and 500 meters is just hard to fly at. So when this thing spawns in and shoots up as high as it can, it goes over our flight ceiling. Somehow we still managed to bomb the thing, probably because our nose is pitched up so high. Oh well. It definitely popped some of the missiles, but not all of them. So this actually does succeed in bombing the Zephyr when the Zephyr is targeting something other than itself. Yeah, so we're trying to pitch too high to maintain altitude because we're flying near the limit of our flight ceiling, and I haven't done many tests with us trying to operate actually at the flight ceiling during the bombing run. So that's another thing that I should be able to fix pretty easily. I'll keep those on my list. Try to get those all adjusted. Missile interceptors actually doing their work there. These things are actually functional with enemy EMP now, so this thing was still operating properly while getting hit by EMP missiles, which is a good improvement over how it was before. So now I'm going to tweak up the last drone and try to get it working a little bit better. And then I'll come in, do a few more tweaks for this to try to get these last edge cases that I hadn't been testing as much working better and get a really reliable dive bomb going. Especially because even though plasma might not be good for dive bombing, compared to just using this from long range with magnetic stabilizers, I want to make a version of it that shoots cram, possibly a missile version, like a bomb missile version, and possibly a very short-range burst-fire APS version, so like, I could compare all of those, and then I'd do similar things with these other drones. So I would like to still keep it as a bomber for now and just like make it a bit more reliable, but I think the carrier and the whole package is going to come first, so I'm going to try to integrate something together, then do a bunch of tweaks and testing. Anyway, I'm actually feeling better now, so I'm going to get cracking and do a lot of building. So that's all for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I'll see you in the future.